Hello, speakers and leaders. Today we're talking about public speaking skills for global audiences. And when it comes to public speaking, for us in the United States or us around the world, speaking isn't easy. Myself, when I was born in Hong Kong, when I came over here in the United States, I always used to think I have an accent. My speaking is not good enough. You when you're watching this, the live or the replay, you probably have your own speaking challenges, whether you are a native English speaker or a non-native speaking English speaking speaker. But today, we want to dive down into, well, how do you get over your speaking nerves? What can you do as a non-native or native speaker to get better as a speaker? And today, I am joined by the lovely Diane Darling, and she is amazing. You all will love her to death. Now, Diane Darling took acting and stand-up comedy in order to get over her fear of public speaking, and that creative mindset has provided a platform for her to succeed through many challenges, including COVID. McGraw-Hill published her books in 9 languages, but she only speaks English. Diane, I'm so glad that you're here with us. Welcome. How are you today?
My pleasure, Kit. It is so nice to see you, and it's such an honor to be with you on the stage here today.
Yeah, so Diane, you took stand-up classes to get over your fear of speaking, huh? I
I
uh,
I did.
yeah,
Yeah.
stand-up is hard, huh?
Stand up is very hard. So I took acting first, and what I learned with acting was that there was about 20, 25 people in the class. It was at Cambridge Adult Education for those
Yeah.
people in the Boston area, just up at Harvard Square. And I would say well over half of them were not native English speakers. And they were
Mm,
doing it for their English as much as they were doing it for acting. And
got it.
as many times as I wanted to quit that class, I got to tell you, I thought, I can't quit. I'm a native English speaker. I mean, they have gone through so many courageous experiences of landing in a country, whether or not you're coming here with a visa, and it doesn't have to be, Ellis Island or something dramatic like that. But if you're coming here as a student, if you're coming here, as a foreign exchange situation or a job or something like that, there's just so many courageous decisions that they make. And I thought, how can I be such a chicken to quit?
Mm,
This acting class that made me feel really uncomfortable. But I learned so much about pacing and diction and slowing down and giving space for that pause. It really did a lot for my public speaking skills, more than I would have ever expected. And the acting was fun. There was one time I was playing a scene from Hannah and her sisters, and I'm yelling at this young lady who was from China, I think. And she was playing one of my sisters and somebody else was playing the other sister. And I'm screaming at both of them
uh-huh.
in this scene. And I thought, this is just great fun. You can scream at somebody and you're not responsible for the awful things you're saying or the way you're saying it or the drama, because you're playing the role of that. So as we play the role of being a speaker, how can we be good at that? So, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Especially I love how you're sharing that. I'm glad. We are glad that you stuck with it, Diane. I want to. What kind of tips do you have actually for non-native English speakers to help them prepare for public speaking?
So one thing I'll share with non-native English speakers is use your accent, if you will, if you have one. And not all non-native English speakers do, but many do, as a gift. Use your accent as a gift. Appreciate the fact that the English ear or the American ear or the English ear will listen to you probably more intently. But the one tip I hope you walk away with is to cherish your words and slow down. The one piece of feedback I give people over and over again when I'm helping them with public speaking is you're speaking too quickly. And many Americans or native English speakers do speak too quickly, and even ones with extremely charming British voices can speak way too quickly. But part of it is you want to be sure that the other person has a chance to process what you're saying. So what I actually invite people to do is think about the words going to the camera and then coming back and then going to the other language and then coming back and then going back again. So you want to slow it down. The other tip I'll share with you is that English is actually a very flat language. It's not a pretty language compared to many other languages, particularly Asian languages that have a melody. I speak a very little bit of Thai. Nit Noi is the word for Nit Noi. Pu Tai Dai means Nit Noi. I speak a very little bit of Thai. And Thai has tones. And so many Asian languages have tones. And so it's beautiful. It's a beautiful sounding language with the voice and the melody. The Indian accent is also one that has a fair amount of melody to it. And what I find sometimes with particularly the Indian population is they speak very quickly. And what happens is the English ear is hearing this pretty song that's going up and down and up and down. But then we forget, oh, there's words to that sound. There's words to that song. I need to listen to the words. So if you're speaking quickly with an accent and we're not paying attention to the words, too often people overlook the situation of how they need to slow down. So those are a couple of different things. One time I was speaking to a European cardiologist, and there were 50, 60 people in the room, and there were probably 40 languages in the room. And it made me appreciate how I needed to slow down and give visuals. So I shared the story about a doctor putting a coat on, and I kind of talked about a doctor putting a coat on with my hands just because I was speaking. What I would learn from the situation, because I saw two people translating the situation next to me, in front of me, I thought what I should have done is I should have had a coat and either put my coat on or put my coat on to somebody else. It was somebody who was sharing the story about a doctor who just put somebody's coat on. And that's why they liked this doctor so much, was because they were kind. But when I saw the translation, I realized, one, I was speaking too quickly, and two, I needed some props.
Well, question for you, and this is great, Diane. So let's say people sometimes maybe they are non-English, but they're focused on the accent, right? I know I was like, how do you have tips for, even though we're hearing you say, hey, yeah, embrace your accent, but what if that's not enough?
So there's two accents. There's the accent that's really hard to understand. There's the accent that really does become problematic. And that means you need to actually work with a speech pathologist or somebody who can really make you change the muscles in your voice. I spoke German as a child. And because I was doing it as a 5, 6, how old? I was 8 years old. Because I was doing it as a little one, I didn't have an accent, because about 7, 8 is when your muscles begin to, so if you're gifted enough to know many languages when you're young, your voice, your muscles can move in different ways. When you're older, it's much more difficult. It's why Arnold Schwarzenegger is fluent in English, but he still has a heavy accent. And that's because he has chosen to be fluent in English, but maybe not necessarily work on his accent. You have someone else like Meryl Streep, who is really an artist and works heavily with all of that. So when I saw the movie Sophie's Choice, and I saw it with, I bumped into a professor who was there, and the professor was from Poland. And the professor told me that Meryl Streep's accent was so perfect that she spoke German with a Polish accent. So she spent time crafting her muscles and all of that. Now, that may not be realistic for everybody else. So you need to have some really wonderful people who will work with you and tell you, is your accent a distraction or can it be a benefit? If it's a distraction, then yes, you want to actually work on it a little bit more. But Kit, I would say your accent is minuscule at best, and it's not a distraction. So I would say instead, let it go and let it be.
Yeah. What about some mistakes that you see speakers do and non-English speakers do?
I think non-English speakers maybe don't use slides enough, because you can have slides that can be very, very helpful for you, that can have some pictures and then maybe go into some of the words that can be different prompts for you. So I think pictures can be a really terrific way to enhance your speaking engagements as a non-native English speaker. You don't want so many words that the words become a distraction. And I know there's all kinds of rules, and Kit, I'm sure you can share that with your team here, in your audience here, about people who, are not necessarily paying attention to the font, or they're trying to squeeze too many sentences, or they're reading from their slides. The slides should not be that, but I would say use some slides. I would also say you want to do some breathing exercises. So one thing that I do in advance, and I would encourage all non-native English speakers to do this as well, is I do squats. I'll do a bunch of power squats and get the, bad air out of my system. I also get my heart rate up, so it's kind of anxious. And I do this about 10 minutes before the speaking engagement. So by the time I'm speaking, my heart is a little bit more calm. I see there's a question there. Can you give me some advice about grammar issues? And that's something where you, again, want to hire people to help you out, review your slides, be sure that there's no typos or mistakes along those lines, and help you with some of that sort of a thing, because those things can be a little bit tender when you are realizing you're actually making a grammatical mistake.
Yeah, and I love how you talked about it. Really, if it's sometimes it's just the grammar or going to a speech pathologist. At first, I thought accent is kind of like the whole thing, and then there's all the stuff that you can do, the practice of the tongue, and then really just speak more clearly. But I love what you're saying. Do squats before your presentation if you get nervous.
Yeah, Kit. I think a lot of people, what people forget is that your nerves become more of a distraction than the accent. So if people see you're really, really nervous, I was speaking, I was at an event one time, and I forget exactly what it was, to tell you the truth, but the speaker just literally at one point locked. I mean, he'd been doing fine, and all of a sudden he went ashen and he locked. And I almost thought he was having a heart situation or something went wrong. And he had this just scared look. And I said, whatever his name was, Joe, Joe, that last comment that you were talking about was, da-da-da. And I said, can you tell me a little bit, I gave him a short answer, and he answered the short. And I said, and another question for you. And I got his confidence enough back, and got his win, because all of a sudden he locked. It's easy to say, Kit, for people like you and me who are comfortable being speakers, because we've worked really, really hard at this. This may have come naturally to some people, but for many of us, for me, I know at one point I was fine as a public speaker, and then all of a sudden I locked as well in my 30s. So I encourage people to really keep up that engine of a practice. But if you do lock and you do have that, stand very still for a moment and say to yourself, my words are not about me. The talk is not about me. My words are a gift to the other people. It's why my words are a present. It's why they call it a presentation. These are a gift. And so if you can stop, I sometimes, when I'm dealing with a difficult situation, I'll go back to Star Trek and I'll do shields up. Imagine bracing yourself. The audience is there to learn from you, to embrace what you are sharing from you. It's not just because I have nothing else to do, I want to watch somebody up there and speak. Earlier today, I talked to somebody about doing an event together, and he said, yeah, let's do a freebie for 90 minutes. I'm like, why would we do a freebie for 90 minutes? It says there's no value to that. Instead, we needed to do a freebie for 20, 30 minutes or something along those lines, and then come up with something afterwards. So you want to realize that the people are there to experience what you have to share, not just are there because they have nothing else to do and they want to watch you fail. That's not what anybody is in the audience to do.
Yeah, I love what you're saying. Your words are there and you are there to help the audience at the end of the day. Can I ask you, Diane? What were you struggling with nerves? If you remember,
I think I was struggling with. Well, for me, it was perfectionism. For me, it's Kit, you're a person of color. I'm a female. A lot of people on these stages are very successful white men. They've had huge careers. They love to talk about themselves and how amazing they are. I'm not necessarily comfortable in talking about, let me tell you how great I am. And by the way, did I tell you about how this part I'm great? And, did I tell you about this accomplishment I had? I think that, that is not the only way those people speak, but I do think there is a more comfort level to being center stage. My brain's jumping right now to a really wacky place, but I remember being homesick on the couch after getting my wisdom teeth out, and I was watching Oprah, and she had a program all about women and their weddings, and why do they, have this whole thing about their weddings. And a psychologist in the audience, not even on the panel, said, it's the one time women get to be the center of attention. They can cry, they can laugh, they can do a temper tantrum, they can do whatever they want, but it's the one time in life. Men get that over and over again at a football field, in a business meeting. All kinds of, behaviors are tolerated. And that was the reason why there was this one grand moment where women got to be the center of attention. I want to just focus on really what we can give in those situations. So I think as people are growing as their speaker, the other thing you really want to do is to know your content. And I think a lot of people get up in these presentations. I get so frustrated when I had said, I wasn't quite sure what I was going to tell anybody. And then about a half an hour, I figured I better, kind of figure out what I'm going to say. I'm like, what a stupid thing to say. The Rolling Stones don't get up on stage and say, well, we were kind of thinking about what song we should sing. No, they have a playlist. They have a, timeline. They know when the lights are going to go up and when the band is going to come in and when the curtains are going to close or the lights are going to go on and what the after song is going to be, so part of it is, I think I remember reading one time, World Wrestling is completely scripted. It's completely scripted. And that's one of the things that I learned about acting is that, good acting doesn't look like there's acting. Bad acting looks like there's acting. But good acting makes you actually believe. Kelsey Grammer, again, I probably read too much wacky stuff, but I was again in a dentist office flipping through People magazine, and he one of the reason his marriage failed one time is he said the woman thought she was marrying Frasier. She wasn't marrying Frasier. That's a character. She was marrying him. So I think in some cases we want to be sure also that as we have this persona that's out there as a speaker, that is an authentic persona, because sometimes we meet people and I'm like, that's really who you are. That's not so exciting.
That's great. I thought I'm marrying Fraser. Yeah. I think it's, and I love what you say. When you see bad acting, then you really see their acting. When they're so good, you don't see anything.
After this acting class, I was just amazed how much I watched TV differently or looked at plays differently. And I'm sure, Kit, you would find the same thing that, when you see things on stage, and when you see an actor who in some cases speaks in multiple languages or goes from, suspense to comedy. I saw, what's her name? Michelle Dockery from Downton Abbey. And she played Lady Mary, the oldest one. And the next thing you know, she was in a British comedy married to Matthew McConaughey with a Cockney accent. As a gun runner. It was like, oh, wow, that she's no longer Lady Mary because she was, foul in her language. And it was just, so you see these things jump and you forget that we have these characters.
Yeah. And, once you see it differently, it's kind of like, how the inside works. And of course that can give you more confidence as well.
One thing I'll share with you, I've also learned to do, Kit, as I walk through the stage and walk through the audience. Now, obviously, we're not doing that right now, but I would, as long as the microphones work, because sometimes the microphones, lock out when you cross a line. But if you can work with the tech team and be sure, people really are absolutely amazed. The first time I ever saw this done was Tom Peters. And I was in the audience and he walked around and I felt like, oh my gosh, Tom Peters is only talking to me. It was just the most amazing experience to have him roam the room. And on occasions he'd come to our corner and you felt like he was just talking to you about, all the different accomplishments that he had had. And so I encourage people to do that or start in the audience if that makes you feel comfortable. and have that be. Sometimes we're up on a stage as if we're up on a pedestal. I think in some cases that can be both good and bad. But if you are with the audience, and this is something I think that virtual has brought to all of us, we're all little squares. And for the most part, we're the same size as each other. On occasions, we get spotlighted and we're a little bit bigger. But for the most part, it's a sense of equality. Also, we have a virtual name tag, so people remember our names. And as we're going to go back into in real life, IRL, experiences, it's going to be a little bit different for us.
Yeah, especially when we go back, it's a good time to start freshening up your speaking skills right now to get ready to go back, hopefully, in the future. I've got a question.
The tiniest speech that someone can give is introducing themselves. And I'm amazed how many people cannot introduce themselves. And the reason I've learned this is because I thought I knew how to introduce myself, but I didn't, or apparently not, because people kept calling me Darlene. And I would say, "Hi, I'm Diane Darling." And they would say, "Darlene, nice to meet you." And then I'd have to figure out at what point do I tell them I'm not Darlene? Do I do this look at my badge or that sort of stuff? Now what I do, and I am dyslexic, so now I do what I call a dyslexic introduction. My introduction today would be, "Good afternoon. I'm one of your speakers this afternoon. I'm so glad to be a guest of Kit. My name is," I pause, "Diane," with a pause, "Darling." So I give people the notion that they're going to hear a name, but before that, I bring in the connection. So I'm the neighbor with the cat. I'm the neighbor with the blue car. I'm the person who, walks, with the green. I wear a green, bright green fleece when I go out for my morning walks. I feel like I'm less likely to get hit by a car when I'm wearing bright colors. So I tend to wear bright colors. And so you say something about yourself. This is my first time to the Museum of Science. This is my first time to the HubSpot conference. This is my first time to whatever. Or I'm the president of the National Speakers Association, or I'm the program chair of this event. My name is, and say that, and it feels really long in our head. In the old days, and when we were in real life, I would tell people to grab their phones and go and swap their phone with somebody else and introduce themselves and video that so they could see later on. It's really not that slow. It sounds slow in our head because we are obviously only having our mouth to our ears is very short, whereas our mouth to your ears is longer.
Yeah, most people don't realize that because, we're just thinking in our heads, okay, what am I saying wrong? I'm talking so fast. But Diane, if people are loving what you are saying, where's the best place to keep on connecting with you in the future?
Well, right now my website's under construction, but you can still go to dianedarling.com, and I have a temporary placeholder right there that you can do. And what I'll also do in a moment is I'll put a little thing in the chat for anybody. Particularly speakers, I have a list called non-cash compensation. So for speakers who are often asked to speak for free, you say, what's the compensation I'm going to get if it's not cash? In some cases, it's a chance to reach a new audience. In other cases, it's a chance to try a new platform. In other cases, it's a chance to try a new talk. And in other cases, it's just a nice give back to a community that you've been a part of. So I'll provide that, and people can sign up for that, and they can get that, and I can follow up with them afterwards. I'll pop that into the chat.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, pop that in. Diane, we talked a lot. I hope whether you're watching live or the replay of this, that you're loving what Diane is saying. Any last things before that we go for the day? Because this is so good. We put it into the chat. So Diane was talking about. So grab that resource over there. But Diane, any last words before we go for the day?
So someone here is asking, do I have any advice for developing flow while I'm speaking on stage? I would say, as far as developing flow, it's worth practicing a lot. And there's a fun book called Dewey. And in the story is about a cat that comes through the return of a library. And the librarian opens up the books for the return, and there's a cat in there. And it's a small little town in Iowa, and they're absolutely sure they can find the owner of the cat, and they just can't. And so the cat gets adopted into the library. And then comes the school trips, and the kids are all excited to see the cat. And all of a sudden they realized there were several children who had, they had kind of given up as ever being able to read. But the children were reading to the cat because the cat just listened or slept. And so I would say find a pet or find a situation where you can practice your speech in a very, very safe place. It may be in a room all by yourself with a camera on you, and then you can't see yourself. Like right now I can, and it's more unnerving, and I'm missing the kit has gone away. But, part of it is practice that, because it will teach you. And this is something that acting really did teach me, was that it was a lot of practice. I had the gift of interviewing many amazing people for my book, The Networking Survival Guide, and several of them talked about public speaking and how it really helped advance their career and why it's so important for you to master it. But one person in particular talked about it as rehearsed spontaneity. And I love that, because you want to think about how you can practice this, but it sounds like the first time the other person has heard it is the first time you've said it. So after I went from acting and I took stand-up comedy, this is where I really learned a lot about comedy, is that comedy is about, it's why many comedians are actually introverts, and some of them extreme introverts. Ellen DeGeneres, Johnny Carson, David Letterman, extreme introverts. And so, but they're writers. And so for them, their gift is learning how to really write. But they practiced it. And when I went to see Letterman in person in New York, it was interesting because he came out and did a lot of kind of the warming up of the audience, and that the theater was Arctic. I had heard this ahead of time, bring a sweater, and it was absolutely true. You wanted to have a good, sweatshirt when you were in there because it was really, really cold. But right before the show starts on TV, the camera's going up, and I'd seen this at home. There was always somebody who was lost on the set. And I thought, why is that person just running across the back of the set right before the show goes on the air? Can't they ever get their act together, was what I would say to myself at home. When I saw the show in person, who was the person running across? David Letterman, to get his nerves out of it. So he came out and he practiced ahead of time. He tried one or two jokes. When we're at home seeing the commercials, actually during the show, the band is playing and his joke writers are huddling around him saying, this audience isn't getting this, but they are getting that. Let's go with this. And they were rewriting their jokes right there, live, that was going on. So a lot of pressure on being able to deliver, which is why you want to practice.
Yeah, going live, that's a whole skill.
We're doing it right now.
Yeah, when things go wrong, are you still breathing? Are you still under control? Yeah. Do you still have, are you still here, being present of your audience? Well, Diane, I want to say thank you so much for today. Any last words before we go?
I would say practice, have a lot of fun with it. It's going to take some time for people to get more comfortable with it. And I would love to hear from anybody, and happy to answer any questions. And thank you so much this is, I think, my second YouTube live so talk about doing, heart palpitations. It was nervous for me. So thank you so much Kit for being such a gracious host.
Oh, you're great. I thought you would have done this a billion times by now. So Diane, thank you so much for giving us your experience, your advice, and your stories. And for the audience members, thank you for tuning in. Diane, thank you so much. Again, we'll see you all later.